Joel McLeod, and welcome to the 905er. Earlier this summer, we did an episode on Burlington's Sound of Music Festival's troubles. The free Waterfront Music Festival is a generational fixture in Burlington and the 905, attracting Canadian talent on their cusp of making it big. It is unique in that it is a 4-day format that attracts a variety of genres and talents. Big name acts like the Trews and the Arkells have all graced the stages of the festival. Millions of people have attended throughout the years, bringing in an equal amounts of dollars of revenue into the downtown core on Father's Day weekend each year of its existence. However, since COVID, the costs of producing this festival have risen, and sponsorships and funding have failed to keep up. As we reported then, the situation has become so dire that this year, 2025, may have been the last year of the festival. To compound the matter further, the festival recently petitioned the City of Burlington for funding and to re-examine their financial relationship. City Council refused, propelling the festival into further uncertainty. Parallel to that decision, the city has also put out questionnaires to the public to inquire an invitation of new musical fest organizer to take the helm for 2026. What was the reasoning behind these decisions? What is the future of the festival? And is the city willing to let this festival end after 40 years of being part of Burlington's life? To answer these questions and others regarding this story, I have invited to the podcast a previous guest, Ward 2 Councillor Lisa Kearns. Lisa is the councillor representing the neighborhood where the festival is held. She is also previously a board member of the festival, however, has stepped down to avoid conflicts of interest in the matter going forward. She joins me today. Okay, thank you, Lisa Kearns, Ward 2 Councillor for the City of Burlington, for coming on today to talk about what's an institution here in Burlington, or maybe will be what in past tense going forward, but the Sound of Music Festival and the city's perspective on refusing to grant the funding request that they were petitioning the city for. So Councillor Kearns, thank you for coming back onto the 905er.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on this really exciting Blue Jays night.
Yeah, this is going to be a short one, folks, because Lisa and I both have to catch Game 5.
Yeah, very important priorities are happening right now. Okay.
We'll get to the point. But so the city of Burlington decided not to grant the sizable funding request that the festival is coming to you to petition you for. Can you take us through the city council's rationale on not granting that request?
Yeah, first why don't we take an opportunity to clarify some of that sizable funding request. So certainly there was a $200,000 loan. There was the normal 150 that comes in with the budget every year. It's going to be in the 2026 budget for a festival that is music based on the lake, depending on how the outcome of this current expression turns out. But really what had happened was the Sound of Music was asked by city staff, come back to us. We need to see what you're going to be doing for the next year, 2026. We recognize there's been some significant funding pressures, sponsorships, etc., have been well below target. We all know that we're in a fairly significant economic downturn, and some of those big corporations and big sponsors maybe saw some of those restraints early on in the summer. So those targets didn't get met, and we're not alone. Sound of Music. Other organizations have been struggling to meet their sponsorship or fundraising targets all across the landscape. So the city said, come to us with your best ideas, your best offer. What do you need to be supported? And so basically Sound of Music swung for the fences and said, to be really comfortable, here's what we need. And that was forgiveness of past loans. We could have worked out a bit of a longer term payment plan. That's not an anomaly to other organizations that have used that type of a structure with the city. And then here's what would be needed to get 2026 on really good, solid economic footing. Of course, anything could be returned if it was shored up by those sponsorship dollars or other upper level federal and provincial government funding. But to be really comfortable moving into 2026, the board was asked, bring me your best ideas, your dream scenario, and let us entertain that. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of back and forth. It was just a number that's been caught up at $750,000 in sort of the news cycle because it hits in a time of difficult financials for many people, businesses, corporations, and municipalities. It looks like it's a huge number that doesn't have that return of value when really it was past forgiveness and then, optimal, no change to the festival. So as we've heard through delegations, through conversations, through online, reconfiguring the festival is an option too. So there's dialogue about should this be a paid fee, an entry, nominal, of course, we want to keep it accessible to everybody, or could the footprint change? So in the absence of doing all of those modifications to the festival, recognizing, of course, if you charge a head cover or an entry fee, you automatically lose that funding from the municipality, because in order to be funded by the municipality, it has to be accessible to anybody and everybody at no charge. So the business case there really is, do you charge the fee and get some greater financial sustainability, or do you keep what you have in hand, which is that municipal funding and a municipal partner? And that conversation, I think, was what didn't really get a good chance to unfold.
Well, let's maybe dive into that hypothetical. The trade-off, I see that, the case is, okay, what, $5-10 a head you paid for entry into the gate. For listeners, there's another festival at the end of the summer, a Rib Fest, that they've switched into that model where I think it's now $5. You pay at a gate and you're entered into the premises for that. But as you said, that cuts off any municipal funding. I don't know if it cut off any other provincial or federal funding, because I mean you're basically turning into almost a paid festival, like a paid event. Like what's I don't understand what would stop somebody from saying, okay, fine, $5, $10, let's just have a ticketed event, $50 a head. You buy tickets on Ticketmaster and you're in to watch the show in the waterfront. Is that on the table? Is that we're seeing that the festival could take?
Yeah, so I think that's the purpose of this expression of interest or a solicitation of ideas from other providers, to say, if not free, because it's clearly not working, or it's not been given an appropriate chance to work, then what? And the other side of the coin that I think is really important to talk about is, first of all, Sound of Music and Ribfest are two absolutely completely different entities. I know they've been coalesced quite a bit in this conversation, but one has paying vendors, the Rivers, and a cover charge. The other is free and pays the talent. So two completely polar opposite events, but also both anchored in that excitement down by the lake and bringing our community closer together. So really great there, but two totally different business models. Both are not for profit, so that's important to note as well. And Sound of Music has one paid employee and almost 1,000 volunteers, which is the engine behind that festival. So community support is needed for both, but the funding structure is different entirely.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the other piece to kind of highlight is most of what the city gives to Sound of Music, the city taketh. So the city giveth and the city taketh, because there's requirements to put on a festival of that size to ensure safety and security of all patrons. And when I say safety, I mean bodily safety, environmental safety. So, there's a huge cost that's associated with off-duty police officers. There's a shift to having Halton paramedics and not St. John's Volunteer Ambulance support. There's fencing costs, which are increasing. The facilities costs are increasing. Those are your porta potties. Those prices have gone up really high. And then as well, all of the city's permits, whether they're stamped engineered stage drawing permits or any of the other permits plus securities, they are quite high. They are not, I think they're the second largest cost expense after the actual talent. And the piece that people sometimes forget is, sure, that might be the day of costs, or the day of, expenses, but there's a lot more that happens with Sound of Music between Battle of the Bands, live and local, different stages. There's been BPAC stage last year. Traditionally, there's been the Street Fest in support with the Burlington Downtown Business Association. There used to be stages right there in Civic Square before its intended renewal. So it's not just a park festival. And when you said it's an institution kind of in the intro, it really is. So it's cultivating that homegrown talent, which you can't really put a price tag on.
And I mean that you said it yourself, and going to re-emphasize, like, you and I are Burlingtonians. Like, this is, and for anyone listening, this isn't just a little like quaint little, oh, I'll take a stroll in the park with my kid and let's see a band play in a gazebo. This is a music festival, and the downtown core pretty much just shuts down except for pedestrian traffic. And as you said, Halton Police are guiding. There's one major roadway, the Lakeshore Road, but you're a fool to drive on it during that weekend. In all honesty, because they're estimating over 150,000 people over the weekend, or like over a 4-day stretch, are visiting our downtown core here. So not only do you have the concert, but you also have like that influx of people that's coming to spend money, shop, eat, dine, drink, whatever. This is I guess what I'm struggling at is, this is a good thing for Burlington. Like, the city must recognize that this is a good thing to have in our downtown core. The businesses must want it. The people, I think, honestly want it. Can we just find a way to make this happen, or what? Where are we on this? That it's just so, I can't quite put my head around. Everybody wants this to happen. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound a lot like a no-brainer, to be honest. And, at the end of the day, the city does spend on arts and culture, through many different lines of investment. I think that the challenge with Sound of Music, which has gone through some bumps, there's no doubt about it. A number of different agencies, boards, and commissions have gone through significant challenges, in recent years in Burlington and beyond. And those are part of the cost of doing business. So, certainly challenges, but when you get first hit by COVID and that COVID recovery piece from such a large outdoor festival, and then this particular year that just passed was significant challenges with the tariffs. So there was a Canadian only lineup, which made maybe a change of interest, maybe more patriotic, maybe more, people wanted to see a different genre or different names that, maybe not be as known. And that's a difficult symptom of the Canadian music scene, right? You want to create more space for that exposure to get that hometown pride going. And we do that. Sound of Music does that through the Battle of the Bands, with the winner of the Battle of the Bands being showcased on the Friday night to really kick it off. So it has been, I was describing it to someone earlier today, just in a casual conversation, saying, it's been a difficult challenge of just errors. So it's been, COVID errors, and then it has been economic downturn, and then it's been tariffs, and then it's been, some HR issues behind the scenes, which no business is immune to. And it's just been all on the backs of volunteers. So a really highly credentialed board oversees Sound of Music, and it's a really easy narrative to talk about, oh, it's mismanagement, it's this, it's that. Well, I would wager that the board is highly credentialed. It was spoken about in a recent delegation by the chair, saying, we've got HR, CHRE people, we've got certified directors, we've got lawyers, we've got accountants, certified accountants. Like, this is people who are both passionate, know the business, and are credentialed very well in their respective industry with a strong board matrix, right? And you can't say that for a lot of places. So that's a place to be pretty proud. But it's really hard when you're pushed up against such a challenging environment. And I'll be very interested to see if there is another operator that in the balance of, you know, 5 or less months can put on something of that scale, which has a perfect record for safety.
It is its
No.
own separate, not-for-profit organization structure that
Yes.
asks the city of Burlington for funds and the permission to use city property. They still exist legally. They have a bank account, yet the city is asking for a new vendor to come in. What is it that the city is exactly looking here? What is it that they're hoping to find here? Somebody to take over the Sound of Music Festival, or a completely new entity like a Live Nation or something to come in and do this instead? What is the city is hoping to find here?
Well, I think the city is trying to find a crystal ball, first of all, because the community had an opportunity to talk about some of their values. And so with those values shifting, saying that they would be more apt to pay a nominal fee to keep it going, versus sort of the previous mandate, which was free festival. So yes, certainly there's a sentiment across council to keep it free. But if the community survey is saying we're okay with a nominal fee, if that's going to be nominal fee or nothing, if those are the two choices, well, we'd obligingly share some of that generosity to keep the festival as we know it going. What the city's hoping to find, I think the dialogue coming out of the city administration, those who voted for this, I voted for it at council, and I did not vote in support at committee. And the reason procedurally I voted on it at council in the affirmative, in a yes, is because if I want to do a reconsideration vote and have this vote taken again, you have to be in the agreement side. So you can't be sour grapes and said, I said no, and I want to try to do another no. But I made that sentiment pretty clear. So hopefully that's a path to walk it back if we don't have a viable other operator. But I guess the city is waiting to see. They said that they have had some conversations, preliminary conversations, and they're going to formalize it a bit more. It'll come before council when those, you know, new operators have made themselves known and have put something together. So we'll have to wait and see. But the values of the community is definitely that it's a music-based festival. Would like it to be free, but would be open to paying a small nominal fee, which completely changes the funding request that Sound of Music put in the first place to cause this chain of events to happen on the city's direction. And then it would be, you know, that it's local music on our beautiful waterfront.
There's a lot of wheels in motion then on this. There's a lot of ways that this could derail. How committed is the city to ensuring that, you know, people want this? Is something that's been going on for, I want to say, almost 40 years, 40 years, thereabouts. If the listeners have me corrected, please do so. But like generations have been going to this thing. If
Yeah.
this, like, is the city willing to walk away and say, well, we gave it our best shot, or will something take place on the waterfront come hell or high water?
Well, that's a good question. So what I saw working the gate, so to speak. So I am on the board. I have resigned from the board, so I'm no longer a Sound of Music Board of Directors member. I resigned a couple weeks ago, I think. That allows me to be unencumbered in order to vote for whatever the city brings forward from this expression of interest. So I've removed any conflict of interest from my roles, and we have to see. I mean, you know, you've got a city budget of 300+ million dollars operational and capital. You've got a 5.8% city tax increase portion getting tabled right now, and you're telling me we can't figure out a way to make something so beloved work, or, you know, sit down and change some of the inputs and the outputs. There's lots of ideas, but how, without a willing partner, do you actually build out that business case that makes sense? There's lots of things. Do you take one day off? Does it one main stage versus the two stages, the west stage and the east stage? Do you cut the could you cut the parade? The city had to shore up on the parade because Sound of Music this year just said we can't afford a parade. They
Mhm.
said, okay, fine, we can't not have a parade. There's more things that go to this long standing event that's evolved. It's ebbed and flowed over the years. Um, but the reality is the people keep coming. They keep coming. And I saw with my own eyes the next generation coming through those gates and walking towards the pier and the lit up waterfront and the stage and the sounds. And pretty much every single teenager in Burlington must have been down there safely. We're without incident again this past year. So you have those tens of thousands of people across 4 days, and you're without incident of violence, of made the worst thing that happened this year. I think a generator on one of the paramedics things caught fire and the fire department was right beside them. So in a comedy of emergency, that was the worst thing that happened. So we're really putting on something, and I say we pretty loosely. I feel it in my soul and in my bones and in my heart, of course. Been on the board for quite a few years and have been going, since 2011, every single year since we moved here to Burlington, but came as a kid. It's special. You can't just bottle that up and shake it out somewhere else, I don't think, or you can't hand that over like a baton. I think it's really something that is it's in the fabric of our great city, and it sits right there on the waterfront.
It is one of those things that you mentioned it. It was one of those things that I didn't think about, but it is the safety factor. It's kind of overlooked, but you know, if you go, if you go on Netflix, you can watch like documentaries on Woodstock '99, which I'm sure you're old enough to remember that catastrophe. And you hear about these festivals that just turn into you know debauchery of just violence and nonsense, but it is still like it's a very family friendly uh, event that attracts like good talent. Like it's not
Yeah.
and it is very unique. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like it that you don't have to pay to attend, but you still get you get a ticketed concert experience out of it.
Mhm.
And has that just been is have we just been kidding ourselves all this time that finally the bill has come due, and Burlington's just been kind of deluding ourselves all this time about how we're going to have a good time on the waterfront on Father's Day weekend.
I mean, I guess it's a sign of the times, right? Like you need to invest where your community is asking you to invest, right? So there was a call out for sponsors, a wide appeal. Economic times were not receptive to that. Maybe even city support made that a nervous investment for corporate sponsors who are under even more scrutiny on their end right now. What are we getting? What's our exposure? We're very grateful to the sponsors that came forward and the partnerships that were created in the last few years for sure, because coming out of COVID was really difficult for those sponsors too. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's still beloved. Like you can see it on every, you can hear it in coffee shops, you can see it on the social medias. It is beloved, and it might have warts and bumps and bruises, and it might not be perfect, and it might change in ways that people do and don't want it to change. But the fact that it's been so steadfast for decades, um, it really hurts to have the thought that it's gone, right? Like this council lost Burlington Taxi, and that was pretty sad. And this is on the chopping block, and we're not doing a viewing party for the Blue Jays like we did with the with the Raptors. No interest by council, none. Cost is too high. So thank you, Rogers, if you're listening. Thank you for the free broadcasting rights for all municipalities. Shout out to Rogers. So I think we really need to kind of assess what the community really wants to see invested in, and think about those types of things, because we're starting to lose a little bit of our identity, and it's kind of quite sad.
Well, you mentioned there's a scheduled property tax increase in Burlington. I mean, and I'm not, Burlington isn't alone in that. Every municipality is facing some kind of increase one way or the other. That's on, we won't get into the nitty gritty of that on this episode. However, there is a feeling of, I'm paying more of my property taxes. What am I getting for that? Because potholes don't get filled, and buses, there's no more buses on the roads, and now we're losing this thing that's always been there. And the average Joe taxpayer, Jane taxpayer, is sitting there going, what am I getting? You want more money from me, but I'm getting less in return. As the elected official on city council, what do you have to say to that person? You're saying, where are my tax dollars going?
I just say, it's interesting to be so selective around when you really want to exercise this fiscal prudency and this showboating of financial sustainability and all these requirements and returns from one particular festival, when that same scrutiny, I don't believe, is as applied heartily across, every single dollar that the city has carriage over. And, I get that Sound of Music has had a few difficult years. I highlighted in council chambers while one of the delegates from Burlington Performing Arts Center was delegating, saying, you missed your sponsorship target in your 2024 financial reports by half. You had a sponsorship target and you missed it by half, but you had a cushion. Sound of Music doesn't. So when it comes to things like that, I think there's an equity of scrutiny piece that needs to really be conversed about. And I think that our community is starting to lose faith in us, to be totally honest. The preliminary results from our community engagement survey that comes out every 2 years has that community engagement piece pretty low. I don't want to quote anything. Maybe we have a follow-up podcast. But the preliminary results came out, I think, September 25th or 29th, last Friday of September. It's on the council information package. And we'll get that report soon in a more formal way, but it doesn't look great. And, I hope that sort of the disconnect between council trying to find a way through some robust dialogue and some business case efforts and things like that to sustain Sound of Music. And one of the interesting things, actually, I'll just highlight, there weren't any egos on Sound of Music board. So we heard from the chair, who said, if you think there's someone out there better, bring them forward. We will step down. I will step down as chair. The board members will walk off, and bring us whoever you think is best in the city to run this festival if there's thoughts around financial mismanagement or things like that, because this highly credentialed board of volunteers is doing their best. And I think that piece was really overlooked. I think sometimes there's a bit of a, people want to be associated with some of these things for ego or to be boisterous. I personally, I'm not a great music person. I don't really know a whole lot about music. I enjoy it, but I don't fan or fawn over pretty much anybody in the music industry. So I'm your perfect board member who's completely uninterested and is only interested in the governance and the finances and the business of it. And we're an operational board, or I was, and that included everybody rolling up their sleeves and doing everything, from picking up garbage to serving beers to taking donations at the gates to counting the money to doing everything alongside the incredibly dedicated volunteers and Brent Kinnaird, the operations officer, the COO. completely amazing what was done with so few people and with a whole entire volunteer engine behind it, not to mention all of the accessibility enhancements to make it a festival welcoming to everybody. It just, at the end of the day, it just feels really deflating because if the story is, if not them, then who? Well, the sponsors didn't come forward. No one's banging down the door to be board members when the board says, hey, you can have these seats. If you think you can do a better job, the seat is yours. So where does that leave us in terms of balancing the two sides where there's challenges and people's huge efforts up against what the community is saying? Like, we love this festival. It's been, a core memory of mine for life. Like, we heard the same kind of comments when Emma is closed, right? Like, when people lose
Hmm.
something in Burlington that hurts their hearts, they're vocal about it, and it's really
Well,
challenging to feel part of that responsibility.
well, I guess you mentioned Emma's. When again, for our listeners, Emma's was a waterfront watering hole that many a high schooler snuck into. Uh, Not me, of course, uh, but we all
Many
had
people
mem.
had many beautiful milestones that they shared
Of course,
when.
of course. I had my wedding party in the room there. Pre wedding party for a family get together. So lots of very good memories in that place. But it closed because of COVID. Uh, and which kind of brings me to this point, which is it seems like COVID hasn't really been over. Like I know the pandemic is officially done, but we're still dealing with this loss. And ever since that, those 2 or 3 years of just change, we've been losing stuff. Like we've lost how much we lose, like favorite restaurants and favorite places to go. um we're now we're on the cusp of losing this. And it sometimes I'm just wondering, like, when does the loss kind of stop for a community? Because my question is, like, what makes a city if it's not for
Well,
these things that we all get together and enjoy? Because what's the point of us living in this city of Burlington or town, any city in Canada, really?
I feel like there's still a flame for sure. There's definitely a flame that's still burning because I saw the people come, right? It's one thing when you are observing or you're reading reports or you heard it was busy or you saw something online. I was there. I was a secret shopper, if you want, right? So I was at the gates serving the beers, picking up the garbage on the west stage at night at whatever 11:30 at night, checking in with the volunteers, thanking the environmental team, listening and overhearing what people were saying, right? Like, I look for
Hmm.
feedback all the time. So I think on balance, it's a beloved festival. It is a part of our identity. And when you look at it from feet on the ground and hear the experience that people are having and talking about in the moment live, like, I just can't get over the different ages. Like that's the piece for me that always hits, where you have people who are coming there with mobility devices, and that's their, they've never missed a year. And you've got young kids with the ear covers on, and the parents are having this great night out with their kids and they're on their shoulders. And you've got teenagers kind of being let out of the house without their parents, even though I was still in the park for the first time with uh, maybe some
Yeah.
drinking on. And so you've got these teenagers getting their first taste of independence. And then you've got, we want to call ourselves Joel middle aged, or what are we? But
Speak for
you've
yourself.
got,
I'm still 25.
so I'm still 25 in my mind. So you've got
Yes.
these extra 25-plus-year-olds who are, you know, it's just a great night out, and you
Hmm.
just take a minute, and every single person has this experience where they take one breath, they take a pause, they look out at the lake, the lights are twinkling, the music is playing, and you have a sip of whatever beverage you're having, and you're just like, how is this even real? How am I really here? This is so special. So I think that flame really is still alive. I think that people are really disengaged. People have been disengaged on the budget. The stats are going to show that people are disengaged with the city. People are in hard times right now. And the longer you kind of pretend they're not, the harder the conversation is going to be. And this really is one of those times where it brings people together because there's no expectations. Like you can go on as little or as many rides as you want. You can eat as much or as little as you want. You can bring a granola bar in your back pocket and a bottle of water. You're not stopped with no food, no drink, no nothing at the gate. You can walk around with that and make that a really affordable option for your family. You can come in the day or you can come in the evening. And I feel like there's very few things that are a little bit of everything for everybody. So no one's going to like love the festival and every single element of it, although I actually think there are a few people and they always show up on Thursday afternoon at the kickoff and they can't wait. But it's certainly one of the only things I've come across that is everything for everybody. And you can make what you want of that festival, but the connection is the piece that's just undeniable.
I'm going to wrap it up shortly, but I just have one final question. So the city is asking vendors to throw their hat in the ring. Let's see how that goes. What's next for the city in this project?
Yeah, so let's talk in blunt process. So council gave direction to issue a request for expression of interest, non-binding, non-contractual, just to say who's out there that thinks they can run a waterfront festival. Maybe it's nominal, maybe it's free, maybe it's Canadian music, maybe it's all talent on Father's Day weekend on the lake. All of the requirements should be in place, like police, paramedics, safety provisions, washrooms, fencing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All those things should be static. Those are standard at the city. And come back with what you think you could do. And then it will be brought to council. Hopefully it gets vetted somewhere by staff. I'm not sure what that process looks like, but within the festivals and events big policy, this would be considered like a platinum or a signature event, which would require council approval. This is not the size of festival that is delegated to staff. Many are Latin Fest, Vegan Fest, stuff like that, Veg Fest. Many are delegated to staff. We can't look at it at the council chambers all the time, but this one will absolutely be a decision of council of who will be awarded the opportunity to do a waterfront music festival, what conditions, and what investment. So $150,000 is still in the budget for 2026 under that recreation community culture envelope. So that money will go to somebody, but I don't know how a festival will happen when that 150, like I told you earlier, it's pretty much gobbled up by the logistics. Before you even play a single note, that money is gone. Logistics, safety, infrastructure, washrooms, stuff like that.
We shall see what happens. Thank you very much, Councillor for Ward 2 Burlington, Lisa Kearns, for coming out to talk about where the Sound of Music Festival stands currently in the city of Burlington. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, and I would be remiss not to end on the final note of absolute thanks to every single volunteer, sponsor, organizer, participant, artist, etc., who's ever had a hand in bringing this level of an incredible festival to our city. Stick with us.